I called her amazing as a joke. Her bodyguard called me husband with a straight face. Ethan had never expected to be nervous in a room full of aliens. He had traveled across the stars, passing through spaceports that glittered like constellations and corridors filled with technology he couldn't even name. Yet here he was, hands slightly shaking, standing in the middle of the grand embassy hall of the distant space station. Called Vierlia, the station floated silently above a gas giant, its surface swirling with colors no human had ever seen firsthand. And yet the building itself felt even more alien. Towering glass walls reflected stars outside, but inside, the polished floors, softly glowing panels, and elegant furniture gave it an almost serene human-like warmth. Almost. He had come as a guest human engineer, part of a diplomatic tech exchange program. Humans were not yet common in these circles, and Ethan felt that his every move was being watched. Not just watched, but measured. Each gesture, each word, each blink might be analyzed by diplomats from worlds that had long since evolved beyond emotions he understood. The hall was crowded. Aliens of all shapes and colors mingled, moving gracefully with expressions that were hard to read. Some had 4 arms, some had no visible eyes, others had luminescent skin that changed color with their mood, or so he guessed. A few of them glanced at him curiously, their heads tilting slightly as if trying to figure out what kind of creature he was. Ethan reminded himself to breathe. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but that could sometimes work in their favor. He was still thinking of his plan to make a good first impression when he saw her. Princess Leora. She moved through the hall with an elegance that seemed effortless, every step measured and precise. Her hair shimmered like liquid silver, her eyes were a deep violet that seemed to see everything, and her robes were unlike anything Ethan had ever seen, flowing, layered, and alive with subtle light patterns. He knew instantly that she was royalty, though something about her made the word feel insufficient. There was intelligence in her posture, power in her calmness, and a subtle hint of humor around the corners of her mouth. Ethan felt his heart race. He had never been starstruck before, but something about Leora made him suddenly aware of every human limitation. Height, skin, hair, voice. He was acutely aware of his plain clothes, the slightly rumpled collar of his shirt, and the way he shifted his weight from one foot to another. "Don't be nervous," he muttered to himself, though the words sounded hollow even to him. He stepped forward. As humans did, he decided humor was his first weapon, safe, disarming, and sometimes brilliant. "Hi, Princess Leora," he said, voice a little higher than he expected. "You're amazing." He immediately regretted it. Amazing was a silly human word. It sounded childish, out of place among beings who communicated with elegance in colors, shapes, and tones he couldn't understand. Yet he waited, half expecting a polite nod or a formal dismissal. Instead, a tall figure standing close behind her spoke. "Husband," the man said, his voice calm, steady, and perfectly straight-faced. Ethan blinked. He looked around, certain he had misheard. The hall went silent, not silent like a quiet room, but silent in the way that happens when everyone notices something extraordinary. The aliens near them paused mid-step, mid-conversation, turning their heads to glance at him. Even some of the younger diplomats seemed frozen. "Husband?" Ethan repeated, unsure if it was a joke. "Yes," the man said again, still expressionless. His dark uniform was sharp, pristine, and intimidating in a way Ethan could feel in his stomach. "Husband?" Ethan swallowed hard. Words failed him. This wasn't in any human etiquette guide he had read, and he had read a lot. This wasn't a diplomatic misunderstanding he could smooth over with charm. No, this was something entirely different. Princess Leora's eyes twitched slightly, and for a brief moment she smiled. Ethan wasn't sure if it was amusement, curiosity, or something more difficult to read. But he saw the corners of her lips lift, just a little, and it sent a strange mixture of relief and anxiety through him. Corvin. That was the name on the nameplate of her bodyguard, etched in a sleek alien script. He was imposing, but not threatening in a typical way. His presence was calm, solid like a mountain, but one that could move faster than thought. Ethan realized that the word husband was not casual. It carried meaning. "Wait. I think there's a mistake," Ethan said, hoping to break the silence, though his voice sounded more human than confident. "No mistake," Corvin replied. His gaze was steady, unwavering. "He is to be considered her husband, ceremony or no ceremony." Ethan's brain spun. A human couldn't be forced into marriage with an alien princess in a room full of diplomats, could they? Surely the concept wouldn't even translate. But Corvin's gaze didn't waver, and Princess Leora's small smile suggested she wasn't displeased, or perhaps that she found the situation entertaining. He decided quickly that panicking would not help. Humans had survived worse situations in the galaxy through quick thinking and adaptability. He squared his shoulders and took a deep breath. "All right," he said, voice steadier than he felt. "Husband it is, then, if you say so." Corvin gave no response other than a slight nod. Leora's smile widened just enough that it caught the light in a way that made Ethan's heart beat faster. Diplomats returned to their conversations, though Ethan could feel their eyes on him. Whispers traveled across the hall. Words he could not understand, colors that shifted in reaction to him, subtle motions of heads and limbs, all indicated curiosity, perhaps suspicion, maybe admiration. And in that moment, Ethan realized humans had an advantage here. Humans were unpredictable. Princess Leora approached him, gliding effortlessly across the floor. "I hope you don't mind unconventional introductions," she said softly. Her voice was melodic, human enough that he understood every word, yet layered with a resonance that hinted at experiences he couldn't imagine. I was hoping for conventional," Ethan admitted, a faint grin forming on his lips. He was trying to mask his panic with humor. "But I guess this works too." She laughed lightly, a sound that seemed to ripple through the room, catching attention without demanding it. It was beautiful, and human instinct told him to admire it quietly. He did. "You are very human," she said, tilting her head, eyes sparkling. "Bold, awkward, and clever, it suits you." Ethan felt a strange surge of pride. Humans had a way of doing things no one else could predict. Sometimes it was clumsy, sometimes it was brilliant, but it was always uniquely human. And here, on a space station surrounded by beings far more advanced than any human civilization, that uniqueness mattered. Corvin, still standing close behind her, watched Ethan carefully. Ethan realized this was no ordinary bodyguard. Corvin had not only declared him husband, but would ensure that everyone understood the seriousness behind it. That word was not flippant, it was a marker of trust. "Shall we?" Leora asked, gesturing toward a quieter chamber set aside from the main hall. Ethan nodded, unsure of what they would do next. He followed her, trying to appear confident even though his thoughts raced. Humans were adaptable, yes, but this situation, being declared the husband of an alien princess by her stone-faced bodyguard, was unlike anything in his experience. As they moved through the halls, the whispers followed them. Aliens' heads turned, observing, analyzing, yet no one intervened. It seemed that once a decision was made by Leora and Corvin, even the most skeptical diplomats had little power to challenge it. Inside her private chamber, Ethan finally allowed himself to take a deep breath. The room was serene, filled with soft light and the hum of technology in a way that was calming, almost human in its familiarity. He glanced at Leora, who was watching him with a curious smile, and Corvin, who remained near the door, alert and unyielding. "This is a lot to take in," Ethan admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I mean, humans have some weird traditions, but nothing like this." Leora laughed softly. "Then you will need to learn ours, slowly, carefully, and perhaps you will surprise us." Ethan's mind raced with possibilities. He was not sure what husband truly entailed in her culture, but he had learned one thing already. In this galaxy, humans were underestimated. Underestimation could be turned into an advantage. Humans could think quickly, act creatively, and charm unexpectedly. He smiled, a little nervously but with determination. "Then I guess I better start learning." Leora's smile widened, as if she had been waiting for him to say that. Corvin remained silent, but Ethan felt the weight of his gaze, watchful, steady, approving in a way that humans might interpret as respect. For the first time since arriving on Virlia, Ethan felt a spark of confidence. He had no idea what being called husband would lead to, but he knew this. Humans had a way of turning even the strangest situations to their advantage. And if nothing else, this situation was going to be interesting. The chamber hummed softly, filled with a mixture of alien technology and quiet anticipation. Ethan realized that his adventure had only just begun. Whatever came next, he would rely on human ingenuity, humor, and heart. That, he knew, was more powerful than anyone could anticipate. And as he looked at Leora, standing there with grace and subtle amusement, He understood that the galaxy had not yet seen the full measure of human cleverness. It was a beginning of something remarkable, unexpected, and entirely human. Ethan tried to calm his racing thoughts as he followed Princess Leora down the soft, glowing corridors of her private quarters. The word husband still rang in his mind, echoing in a mix of disbelief and awe. Humans had never been officially married to an alien princess, especially not on the first meeting. But here he was, being led by her like he was somehow part of her world now. Leora moved with the same elegance that had first stunned him, but now he noticed subtle changes in her posture and gaze as she glanced at him occasionally. There was curiosity there, yes, but also a faint amusement, almost teasing. It unsettled him in a strange way. Humans weren't used to being examined with such calm precision. Corvin walked silently behind them, a solid presence. Ethan couldn't stop noticing how alert the bodyguard was. Every flicker of movement, every whisper of sound seemed to register with him instantly. Ethan realized that if anything in this station went wrong, Corvin would notice first. And perhaps, just perhaps, Corvin would judge whether Ethan was worthy of that husband title. They entered a private sitting room. It was spacious but cozy, with a soft carpet that felt surprisingly human-like under his boots, and windows that looked out onto the swirling colors of the gas giant below. Leora gestured for him to sit. He did, careful not to slump or fidget too obviously. "You are thinking too much," she said softly, her eyes brightening as if reading him. "Humans often do, but sometimes thinking is only part of the story. Action, intuition, sometimes that matters more than thought." Ethan blinked, unsure how to respond. He was human, yes, but he had always relied on both thinking and action. Still, it was refreshing to hear someone appreciate unpredictability as a strength rather than a weakness. I guess humans do have their ways," he said cautiously. "We're not always the fastest or the strongest, but we're creative." Leora smiled, a gentle curl of her lips. "Creative, yes, that is why I am interested in you. Not just your title as a guest engineer, but you are unlike anyone I have seen before." Ethan's pulse quickened. Compliments from alien royalty were not something one could prepare for, and yet here he was, trying to act nonchalant while feeling a rush of pride. He glanced at Corvin, who remained standing near the entrance, motionless. There was something almost magnetic about the bodyguard's vigilance. Ethan couldn't decide whether it was intimidating or reassuring, perhaps both. "So, what does being husband mean here?" Ethan asked, choosing his words carefully. "I mean, humans have a simple understanding, but I suspect it's very different in your world." Leora chuckled softly. "It is more a matter of trust than law. You are considered my partner, my confidant. Your actions reflect on me. Your ideas influence my decisions. And so Corvin ensures that you are treated as one worthy of such a position." Ethan swallowed. It was a lot to take in, not just because it sounded like a huge responsibility, but because he realized humans could do things no one expected. Humans were clever, adaptable, and unpredictable, and that unpredictability could be respected even in a galaxy far more advanced than Earth. I'll try my best," Ethan said, voice steady though his mind raced. "I'm not sure I completely understand, but I'll learn fast." "You will," Leora said. "You have the human spirit. That counts for a lot." The conversation shifted as they discussed the embassy itself. Leora explained the subtle tensions between different alien delegations, the unspoken rules of politics, and the value of small gestures and words. Ethan listened carefully, realizing how different diplomacy was here. Words were often double-edged, and a gesture that seemed simple could carry immense meaning. "Observe always," she advised, "and act when you see the right moment. Humans, sometimes they see what others miss." Ethan nodded. That was something he could do. Humans had a talent for noticing patterns others overlooked, for finding solutions where no one expected them. And in this moment, he realized that being called husband was not just a joke or ceremonial title. It was a chance to prove that humans could surprise even the most sophisticated beings. Hours passed as they talked and walked through the quarters. Ethan began to notice small things. How Leora's eyes lingered on details, how Corvin's posture shifted subtly depending on the conversation, and how the room itself seemed to respond to their movements, adjusting lighting and temperature. Everything here was advanced, yet familiar enough for him to feel a small sense of home. As the conversation quieted, Leora's expression softened. "Ethan, I am curious. Humans are often underestimated by other species. Why do you think that is? Ethan leaned back slightly, considering. Humans, we don't have advanced technology like many others. We can't always match speed or strength, but we learn, we adapt, we think differently. And maybe we take risks others won't. We try things that don't make sense at first. She studied him carefully. And that is why Corvin trusts you? Ethan chuckled lightly. I think that's more him testing me. If I fail, I fail. If I succeed, well, then maybe humans are more useful than anyone expected. Leora's laughter was soft but genuine. Perhaps. I have seen other species underestimate humans before, but you are different. Bold, unpredictable, and clever. That combination is rare. Corvin remained silent, his dark eyes fixed on Ethan. The human engineer realized that the bodyguard's judgment was not only about competence, it was about character. Corvin watched humans the way one might watch fire, dangerous if uncontrolled, useful if respected. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime. Leora glanced at a small device on her wrist, and the room's lighting shifted slightly, indicating a new visitor at the embassy. Ethan noticed how quickly she adapted, how smoothly she read the alert and prepared to respond. "Stay here," she said to Ethan. "I will handle this." "Observe, you may learn something." Ethan nodded. This was his moment. Humans learned by observing and improvising. He watched as Leora moved, her every gesture precise and elegant, yet full of human-like intuition. She interacted with the new delegation in a way that was firm but friendly, commanding respect without raising her voice. Ethan realized something important. Humans didn't need to dominate with force. They could stand out by thinking differently, by using creativity and courage. This was exactly what the galaxy underestimated. And perhaps in her presence, humans could show their value in ways even aliens had not imagined. Hours turned into the late cycles of the station's day. Ethan and Leora returned to the sitting room, discussing the strategies and decisions she had made. He asked questions, offered suggestions, and noticed she considered each carefully, even if her response was subtle. She was testing him, challenging him, and he welcomed it. "You are quite human," she said finally, with a tone that mixed amusement and admiration. "Even when I do not understand all of your ways, I can see your value. That is something rare." Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. Humans were underestimated often, but here, in a galaxy far beyond Earth, his creativity, humor, and perspective mattered. He realized that sometimes the simplest observations or ideas could have immense influence. "Thank you," he said quietly. I think I understand a little better now. Humans may be small, but we try. We find ways. That counts for something, right?" "It counts for much more than that," she said. "And that is why Corvin and I have chosen to place this trust in you." Ethan looked at Corvin, standing silently as always, and felt a sense of respect for the bodyguard. Corvin's trust was not easy to earn. Humans might be underestimated, but their courage, intellect, and unpredictability could make them invaluable. Ethan realized that he had just begun to scratch the surface of what humans could do in this galaxy. Night fell over the station, and Ethan gazed out at the swirling gas giant below. Its colors reflected in the glass of the window, painting the room in shades of orange, purple, and gold. He felt a mixture of awe and excitement. The galaxy was enormous, full of beings more advanced than humans in many ways, yet humans had something no one could predict: ingenuity, adaptability, and heart. "This is going to be interesting," he whispered to himself. "Really interesting." Leora joined him at the window, her presence calm yet powerful. "You see," she said softly, "humans often surprise us. Even when we think we understand them, they find ways to exceed expectations. That is why you are here, Ethan. That is why you matter." He realized that being called husband was not merely a title. It was a sign of trust, of partnership, and of the possibility that humans could change how the galaxy saw them. He felt a spark of pride, not in himself alone, but in humanity as a whole. Corvin, still standing nearby, gave a small nod. Ethan interpreted it as approval. Perhaps humans could indeed be trusted. Perhaps humans could, with creativity and courage, achieve things the galaxy had not imagined. As he looked back at Leora, he understood something else. This was not just about being clever or resourceful. It was about connection, about trust, and about the human spirit. And that spirit, he realized, was stronger than any technology, faster than any machine, and more unpredictable than any alien strategy. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt that humans could truly make a mark in the stars, not with weapons, not with dominance, but with ingenuity, courage, and heart. And perhaps, just perhaps, being called husband was the beginning of that mark. Ethan woke to the soft hum of the space station around him. The light streaming through the window was pale and golden, reflecting off the swirling clouds of the gas giant below. He had spent the night thinking about everything that had happened, the declaration, the trust, and the weight of being called husband by Corvin. Humans were never expected to thrive in alien courts, yet here he was, already becoming a figure of interest and perhaps even respect. He dressed quickly, keeping his movements careful yet relaxed. Today would be another day of observation and learning. Leora had said he would learn more by watching than by speaking at first, but he suspected the next challenge would test both his mind and his instincts. Humans were clever, but cleverness alone could not earn the trust of beings who lived lifetimes in which entire civilizations rose and fell. The corridor leading to the main embassy hall was quiet. Corvin followed silently, his footsteps like a shadow behind Ethan. The bodyguard's presence was comforting, if intimidating. Ethan realized that Corvin's confidence came not from aggression, but from precision. Every action had purpose, every pause had reason, and every glance carried judgment. As they entered the hall, Ethan noticed the subtle shifts among the alien diplomats. He had been a curiosity yesterday, but today there was an unmistakable change. Some eyes followed him with cautious respect. Others tilted their heads, watching for patterns. It was clear that news of his presence and the strange, human connection to the princess was spreading faster than he had imagined. Princess Leora was waiting near a central platform, where representatives from multiple worlds had gathered. Her eyes met his, and she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was a signal: observe, act carefully. Ethan took a deep breath. This was human advantage in its purest form, unpredictable action combined with careful observation. He moved toward her, trying to appear confident, even as every nerve in his body buzzed with awareness. The session began. Delegates spoke in languages Ethan did not understand, their words flowing like music, punctuated by gestures that seemed like an entire vocabulary of their own. Leora translated selectively, summarizing the points for him. It was intricate, delicate diplomacy, but he noticed patterns others might miss. Hesitations in tone, subtle changes in skin color, tiny shifts in posture. Ethan realized that humans had always excelled in situations like this. While other species relied on raw strength, speed, or intellect alone, humans could combine observation, intuition, and emotion to understand a scenario quickly. He began taking mental notes, anticipating reactions before they happened, and preparing suggestions that were not only clever but also unexpected. "Ethan," Leora whispered at one point, "what do you think?" He paused, thinking carefully. A delegate from a distant world had just proposed a complex trade arrangement. On the surface, it seemed fair, but Ethan noticed a small detail. A clause that would limit smaller planets from benefiting fully, a subtle power play masked in diplomatic language. "I think," Ethan said softly, "there's a way to adjust this so it looks fair but ensures that every planet gets equal opportunity. It's a minor change, but it could prevent long-term resentment." Leora's eyes glimmered with appreciation. "Explain." He did, keeping his voice steady. He spoke in simple terms, reasoning through the adjustment logically yet clearly. Leora nodded as he spoke, and she presented the suggestion to the assembly. The reaction was immediate. Murmurs of approval, subtle nods, and small gestures of agreement spread across the hall. Delegates were impressed not only by the idea but also by its human delivery, straightforward, clever, and respectful. Corvin's eyes narrowed slightly, as if evaluating Ethan's performance, but Ethan sensed approval behind the stoic mask. The bodyguard had just tested him, and Ethan had passed without even realizing it. As the meeting progressed, Ethan found himself becoming more confident. Humans were often underestimated because they did not appear as refined, as polished, or as precise as other species. But humans had creativity. Humans had intuition. Humans could act boldly where others hesitated. And now Ethan was proving that humans could do more than survive. They could influence, they could lead, and they could earn trust in a way no one expected. During a break, Leora approached him with a small device in her hand. Ethan, she said softly, the next task will require more than observation. It will require action. Are you ready? He nodded. I'm ready. The task was simple to explain, but challenging to execute. A system controlling life support and environmental regulation in a wing of the embassy had malfunctioned. Alien engineers had tried adjustments, but their solutions either failed or caused minor disturbances elsewhere. It was a delicate balance. One mistake could make the environment uncomfortable, or worse, unsafe, for all the delegates present. Ethan felt a surge of excitement. Humans often thrived in situations where others relied solely on routine or established protocol. Unpredictable thinking could solve problems that conventional methods could not. He approached the control panel, observing carefully, noting the readings, the patterns of fluctuation, the subtle timing of adjustments. Go ahead, Leora said quietly. Trust yourself. He did. He made a sequence of adjustments, combining his understanding of human logic with the alien technology before him. It was unfamiliar, but his mind was adaptable. Humans were born to improvise, to find solutions in situations no one had planned for. Corvin watched silently, his expression unreadable. Ethan felt the weight of judgment but refused to falter. He pressed the final sequence, held his breath, and waited. The system stabilized. The lights glowed evenly, the air became perfectly balanced, and the monitors confirmed that the life support system was operating at full efficiency. A wave of relief swept through the room. Delegates exchanged surprised glances, some even clapping lightly in quiet appreciation. Ethan realized that he had just demonstrated human ingenuity in a way no one could ignore. Leora's smile was radiant, a mixture of pride and amusement. You see, she said softly, humans do have a unique way of thinking. One that can surpass even the most advanced technology when used wisely. Ethan felt a sense of quiet pride. Humans were often underestimated, yes, but their unpredictability, adaptability, and creativity were their greatest strengths. He had just proven it, not with force, but with mind, skill, and courage. Later, as the day drew to a close, Ethan sat with Leora and Corvin in the sitting room again. He could see the way Corvin's eyes followed him, noting his posture, his expressions, his confidence. It was silent approval, subtle but undeniable. Corvin did not speak lightly, and his acknowledgement meant more than any praise could. Leora leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. Ethan, humans have a spirit that is rare in the galaxy. You have proven it today. Not with aggression, not with power, but with intelligence, creativity, and courage. That is why you are trusted. Ethan felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. Humans might not be the strongest, fastest, or most technologically advanced species, but they had heart. They had ingenuity. They had the ability to turn even impossible situations into opportunities. You make it sound so simple, he said, smiling faintly. But humans, we just try, we find a way, and sometimes it works. Leora's eyes sparkled. Yes, Ethan, and sometimes what humans accomplish is more impressive than even they understand. That is why your presence here matters. Corvin, still standing near the door, gave a subtle nod. Ethan understood it as the highest form of approval from someone like him. The bodyguard did not give praise lightly. Humans had shown courage, skill, and ingenuity once again. The rest of the evening passed in quiet discussion. Ethan and Leora explored the nuances of the embassy, sharing insights, learning from each other, and building an understanding that transcended language and species. He realized that trust, once earned, could open doors no one expected. As night fell over the station, Ethan gazed out at the swirling gas giant below. Its colors shimmered with hints of pink, orange, and violet. The vastness of the galaxy stretched beyond comprehension, but he no longer felt small. Humans had been underestimated for centuries, but he was beginning to understand that they had a way of surprising even the most advanced civilizations. Leora joined him at the window, her presence calm and reassuring. Ethan, she said softly, you have shown today that humans are more than they appear. You think differently, you act boldly, and you see opportunities that others miss. That is a rare gift. Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of pride. Humans were underestimated often, yes, but their creativity and courage could change minds, influence decisions, and earn trust where others might fail. Corvin, ever watchful, gave another subtle nod. Ethan smiled quietly. It was approval, yes, but also recognition. Humans could do more than survive in this galaxy. They could thrive if they dared to trust themselves. As he stood there looking out at the endless stars, Ethan realized something powerful. Being called husband was not just a title. It was a test, a challenge, and an opportunity. Humans had survived, adapted, and thrived against the odds before, and now here among the stars they had the chance to do it again. He glanced at Leora, who was watching him with quiet amusement. "You are human," she said softly. "Unpredictable, clever, and bold. That is why you matter. That is why you will continue to matter." Ethan smiled. He understood now that humans had something no other species could replicate completely. The courage to act, the creativity to solve the impossible, and the heart to earn trust. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was enough to change the galaxy forever. The day began quietly, but Ethan sensed immediately that it would not stay that way. The corridors of the embassy were unusually busy, and whispers followed him wherever he went. Humans were still a novelty here, and his growing reputation as Leora's husband and a clever problem solver had already begun to ripple across the diplomatic circle. Aliens who had dismissed him yesterday were now watching closely, some with curiosity, others with thinly veiled respect. Ethan walked beside Leora as she moved through the hall. She did not hold his hand or touch him, but her presence was a quiet signal: trust, partnership, and expectation. Corvin shadowed them as always, an immovable figure of strength and silent evaluation. Ethan had long since stopped being intimidated by Corvin. Now he felt a sense of challenge from the bodyguard, a push to perform, to show that humans were more capable than any observer could guess. Today's task was different. A delegation from multiple star systems had arrived unexpectedly, bringing a complex mix of proposals, demands, and complaints. Alien politics were subtle and precise. One wrong word or gesture could shift alliances, create tension, or undermine trust. Ethan had never participated in anything like this, yet he felt strangely confident. Humans had survived impossible odds on Earth by thinking differently, acting boldly, and improvising when conventional strategies failed. The galaxy was no different in that regard. Leora addressed the delegation first, her voice calm, clear, and melodic. She listened patiently, nodding at points, translating and summarizing. Ethan watched, noting the subtle cues others missed. Hesitation in tone, slight changes in skin color, tiny shifts in posture that revealed the true feelings of each representative. It was observation, pattern recognition, and empathy, a combination humans excelled at. At one point, a representative from a distant world raised a proposal that sounded fair on the surface, but hit a small but crucial disadvantage for less technologically advanced planets. Ethan leaned closer to Leora and whispered, "That clause, it will limit smaller systems if passed. I think we could adjust it slightly to balance the benefits without offending the delegation." Leora's eyes sparkled. "Go ahead, explain." Ethan spoke, carefully and clearly, using simple logic but framing it in a way that respected all parties. He suggested a small procedural adjustment, a subtle compromise that ensured fairness. Leora presented the idea with a confident smile, and the reaction was immediate. Murmurs of approval, gentle nods, and gestures of agreement spread across the hall. Delegates were impressed, not just by the idea, but by the human way of presenting it, direct, logical, and unexpectedly creative. Corvin's eyes followed him closely. Ethan felt the bodyguard's evaluation, the silent weighing of character, ability, and reliability. This was more than trust, it was recognition of skill. Humans were underestimated often, but their ability to improvise and think outside the expected patterns gave them power other species rarely anticipated. The delegation meeting continued for hours. Ethan contributed where he could, offering solutions, predicting conflicts, and pointing out consequences that others had missed. He realized that humans had an advantage that went beyond intelligence, emotional awareness, and intuition. Even the most advanced alien species could not fully predict human choices because humans combined logic with creativity and courage. By midday, it became clear that Ethan's contributions were not just helpful, they were shaping the outcome of the negotiations. Leora's subtle smiles and approving glances encouraged him, but she allowed him the space to lead in small ways. This partnership, human ingenuity alongside alien authority, created a dynamic that no one in the hall expected. During a break, Leora led Ethan to a quieter chamber. "You have done well," she said, her tone calm but warm. "You see patterns others miss, and your suggestions are effective. Humans have a unique way of thinking. I am glad I trusted Corvin's judgment in declaring you husband." Ethan smiled, feeling both pride and relief. "I'm learning," he said. "Humans may not be the most advanced species, but we have ways of finding solutions, and we try when others hesitate." She nodded. "And that is precisely why humans are valuable. Sometimes unpredictability is the key to progress." Corvin remained near the doorway, silent and vigilant. Ethan had learned to read the bodyguard's expressions subtly. A slight nod, the tilt of a head, or a brief narrowing of the eyes conveyed approval or concern. Today, Ethan sensed approval. His confidence grew, and with it, his understanding that humans could influence events in ways far more sophisticated than mere force or technology. Back in the main hall, the final stage of the delegation negotiations began. A technical dispute arose about resource allocation between multiple star systems. Alien engineers had tried calculations, simulations, and projections, yet they could not agree on a solution that satisfied all parties. It was a complex problem, seemingly unsolvable without tension or conflict. Ethan stepped forward, offering a human perspective. "What if we approach this differently?" he suggested. "Instead of dividing by resources alone, we divide by potential outcomes and shared responsibilities. Each system contributes based on what they can do, not just what they have. That way, everyone benefits without overburdening any one planet." The room went silent. Delegates exchanged glances, some skeptical, some curious. Leora's calm expression encouraged him, and Corvin's unwavering gaze reminded him to remain confident. Ethan continued, explaining the logic simply, walking them through the steps of the solution. His explanation was human in its clarity, straightforward, honest, and clever without arrogance. Slowly, the representatives began to nod. Murmurs of approval turned into discussion, but this time, every voice agreed more easily. The compromise was accepted, and tensions dissolved. The aliens were impressed not just by the solution, but by the human mind that had conceived it. Ethan felt a surge of satisfaction. Humans had survived countless crises on Earth by thinking differently, by using creativity when others relied on force or authority. Today, that same skill had earned trust, respect, and recognition in an entirely alien environment. Later, Leora and Ethan walked through the corridors again, now quieter with the day's negotiations concluded. She spoke softly, her voice almost musical. "You have shown today that humans can lead in subtle ways. You do not rely on dominance, you rely on intellect, courage, and observation. That is rare and powerful." Ethan smiled faintly. "I never thought I'd be leading anything here, but humans have a way of making the impossible seem manageable. That's our strength. We adapt." She nodded. "And that is why you are trusted. Not because you are human, but because you embody what humans can be at their best. Clever, resourceful, and brave in ways others cannot predict." Corvin followed silently, his presence a reminder of discipline and vigilance. Ethan realized that trust had been earned today, not just from Leora, but from the bodyguard who had declared him husband with a straight face. That declaration was no longer just a strange joke. It was recognition of capability and reliability. As evening fell, Ethan and Leora returned to her private chamber. The view of the gas giant below shimmered with shades of violet, gold, and orange, reflecting the lights of the station. Ethan leaned against the window, considering the day's events. Humans had been underestimated, yes, but they had a way of surprising others. Leora joined him, her presence calm yet powerful. "You see, Ethan, humans are unpredictable, but that unpredictability can be valuable. Your actions today have earned respect not through force, but through insight, ingenuity, and courage. That is something even advanced civilizations cannot easily replicate." Ethan nodded, feeling pride swell within him. Humans were often seen as weak or naive, yet they could influence events in ways no one expected. He realized that he was not just learning the alien ways. He was showing what humans could do when underestimated, unprepared, and given the opportunity to act. Corvin stood nearby, as vigilant as ever. Ethan recognized the silent approval again. He had passed tests that were not formal but no less real. Humans could adapt, think differently, and solve problems others could not. That was their strength. As night deepened over the station, Ethan gazed out at the stars, shimmering endlessly beyond the gas giant. He felt a sense of purpose, a feeling that humans could truly make a mark in the galaxy, not through violence or dominance, but through ingenuity, courage, and heart. Leora's voice broke the quiet. "Ethan, you have done more than I expected. Humans often surprise me, and today you have shown why. The galaxy will notice your presence, whether they understand it fully or not." He smiled faintly, realizing the truth in her words. Humans had always relied on creativity, courage, and cleverness to survive. Now, in the presence of advanced civilizations and alien diplomacy, those same qualities could earn respect, influence outcomes, and build trust. Corvin's steady gaze reminded him that recognition and trust were not given lightly. Humans had a reputation for adaptability and ingenuity, and today, Ethan had proven that reputation true. Being called husband had transformed from a strange declaration to a symbol of trust, responsibility, and opportunity. As he stood with Leora, Ethan understood that the journey was only beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and opportunities, and humans had a unique place within it. Their unpredictability, creativity, and courage were assets that could change minds, influence decisions, and earn respect across worlds. He smiled quietly to himself. Being human had never felt more powerful, more meaningful, and being her husband, whatever that truly meant, was no longer a joke. It was a chance to prove that humans could do more than survive. They could inspire, influence, and thrive in a universe that had never fully understood them. The morning light filtered through the glass walls of the embassy, painting the floors with pale gold. Ethan stood at the edge of the observation deck, looking down at the swirling clouds of the gas giant below. The colors shifted gently, orange, violet, gold, like a living painting. He could feel the weight of the past days pressing on him, the word husband, the trust he had earned, the challenges he had overcome. Yet there was no fear, only anticipation. Humans had a way of rising to challenges, and today was no different. Princess Leora approached, moving with her usual grace. "Today will be important," she said softly, her violet eyes studying him. "The council will convene, and decisions will be made that will affect more than just this station. Your presence may be pivotal." Ethan swallowed, excitement and nervousness mingling. Humans often succeeded by acting when others hesitated, by seeing opportunities where others only saw obstacles. Today, he realized, he might have the chance to show exactly what that meant on a scale larger than any single negotiation or problem. Corvin followed silently, as always, a shadow of alertness behind them. Ethan had long since grown used to the presence of the bodyguard, and now it felt almost reassuring. Corvin's gaze was steady, expectant, and Ethan knew that the bodyguard's trust had been earned, not lightly, but through actions and judgment. The council chamber was vast, filled with representatives from dozens of worlds. Aliens of every imaginable shape and size moved through the space with purpose and authority. The moment Ethan entered, conversations quieted, whispers spread. Humans were still rare in such circles, and the knowledge that Ethan was Leora's husband, and a clever problem solver only added to the intrigue. Leora stood at the center, her presence commanding attention without raising her voice. She greeted delegates warmly but firmly, translating and summarizing with elegance. Ethan observed carefully, noting patterns, body language, and subtle signals that could hint at hidden intentions. Humans had always excelled in this way, detecting details that others overlooked, reading between lines and finding paths others missed. A crisis arose quickly. A delegation proposed a reallocation of trade routes and resources that would have disadvantaged several smaller systems. The discussion became tense, and human delegates were silent. Ethan noticed the subtle tension in the room, the shifting skin colors, slight hesitations in tone, and unspoken motions that indicated disagreement. He leaned toward Leora. "They're missing the real issue," he whispered. "If we adjust the allocation to focus on potential and contribution, not just resources, it can be fair for everyone. It's subtle, but it will prevent resentment." Leora's eyes brightened, a small smile forming. "Do it," she said. Ethan stepped forward carefully, keeping his voice calm and steady. "Honored delegates," he said, "humans have an approach that might help. We look at both potential and contribution, not just resources. By sharing responsibility based on capability, each system benefits without disadvantaging others. It creates balance and ensures that no one is unfairly burdened." There was silence for a moment. Delegates exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. Ethan continued, calmly explaining the reasoning behind his suggestion, walking them through the logic step by step. His words were simple, clear, and clever, not arrogant but confident. Humans had a way of doing that, turning complex problems into understandable solutions. Slowly, heads nodded. Murmurs turned into conversation, but the tone had shifted. The delegation that had proposed the unfair allocation began agreeing with his solution, as did others who had been hesitant. A balance was struck, and the tension dissolved. Ethan felt a surge of pride. Humans often succeeded not through power, but through creativity, reasoning, and courage. Today was another proof. Leora glanced at him, eyes sparkling. "You see, Ethan," she said softly, "humans have a talent that is underestimated. Unpredictable, clever, and bold. That combination is rare in this galaxy." Ethan smiled. "I guess humans just try. We look at a problem, we think, and we act. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but when it works, it can change things." Corvin, standing silently nearby, gave a subtle nod. Ethan recognized it as the highest form of approval from someone like him. The bodyguard had judged him capable, reliable, and worthy. Humans had won trust, not through aggression or dominance, but through skill, insight, and heart. The rest of the council meeting passed in a similar way. Delegates proposed challenges, raised concerns, and debated policies. Ethan offered input where it mattered, solving problems that others had overlooked and predicting outcomes with careful observation. By the end of the session, the council had made decisions that were fair, balanced, and efficient. Humans had contributed in a way that no one expected, and the delegates left the chamber with a mixture of respect, admiration, and curiosity. After the meeting, Leora led Ethan to a quiet chamber overlooking the swirling clouds below. "Today you have done more than I imagined," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You have shown that humans are not just clever. They can influence entire systems, shape decisions, and earn respect in ways others cannot anticipate." Ethan felt a warmth in his chest. Humans were often underestimated, yes, but they could turn unpredictability into power. They could act boldly, think creatively, and earn trust when others failed. He had learned that trust and opportunity were two sides of the same coin. Humans had a unique ability to take both and create results that were far beyond expectation. "You make it sound so simple," Ethan said, smiling faintly. "But humans, we just try, and when we try, we sometimes surprise ourselves and others." Leora's violet eyes sparkled. "And that is why your presence matters, not just as my human husband, but as a representative of your species. You embody what humans can do at their best: cleverness, courage, and heart. That is more powerful than anything else in this galaxy." Corvin's gaze remained watchful, steady, and approving. Ethan realized that recognition and trust had been fully earned. Humans had proved their value, not through force, not through technology alone, but through intellect, intuition, and courage. Evening fell over the station, painting the clouds below with deep purples and golds. Ethan stood at the observation deck again, Leora beside him. Corvin remained close, silent, yet present in a way that felt protective and supportive. "You have changed the way many beings see humans," Leora said quietly. "Not because of strength or numbers, but because of mind and heart. That is rare. That is remarkable." Ethan smiled, gazing at the endless stars. Humans had survived countless challenges on Earth, and now, even across the stars, they could make a difference. They were underestimated, yes, but unpredictability, courage, and cleverness were their greatest tools. Leora placed a hand lightly on the railing beside him, a gesture of trust and partnership. "You have proven today that humans can be more than expected, more than imagined. That is why you are my human. That is why Corvin trusts you, and that is why the galaxy must take notice." Ethan felt a deep sense of pride. Being called husband had begun as a joke, then became a responsibility, and now it was a symbol: trust, partnership, and the potential to change perspectives. Humans had always found ways to turn the impossible into reality, and today, in a galaxy far beyond Earth, they had done it again. The gas giant shimmered below, its swirling colors reflecting the lights of the station. Ethan realized that he was no longer just a guest or a novelty. He was a participant, a problem solver, a human whose ingenuity could influence outcomes in a world that had never expected much from his kind. Corvin's steady gaze reminded him that actions mattered more than words. Trust had to be earned, and humans had earned it today, not through dominance but through cleverness, courage, and heart. Humans could surprise, inspire, and achieve what others considered impossible. Leora's voice broke the quiet. Ethan, the galaxy will remember today. You have shown that humans are not to be underestimated. You have shown what it means to be bold, creative, and brave. That is why you matter. Ethan smiled quietly. Being human had never felt more powerful, more meaningful. Being her husband, whatever the full implications, was no longer a joke. It was a partnership built on trust, ingenuity, and courage. He turned to the stars, feeling the immensity of the galaxy stretching endlessly before him. Humans were small in number, yes, but their impact could be immense. They could think differently, act boldly, and change outcomes that seemed fixed. They could earn trust in ways no one expected, and today he had proved it. As he stood beside Leora, Corvin watching silently, Ethan understood that humans had a unique place in the galaxy. Their ingenuity, unpredictability, and heart were their greatest strengths. They had survived challenges beyond imagination, and now they could inspire, influence, and thrive among the stars. He smiled again, a quiet sense of triumph warming him. Humans had survived, adapted, and thrived for millennia. Now, even on distant worlds, that spirit had the chance to shine. Being underestimated was no longer a weakness, it was an opportunity. And humanity had taken that opportunity, proving that cleverness, courage, and heart could shape the galaxy in ways no one expected. Ethan looked at Leora one last time as the lights of the station reflected in her eyes. "We did it," he whispered. "Humans, we did it." And in that moment, standing on the edge of the galaxy's wonders, Ethan knew the truth. Humans didn't conquer with force or fear. They conquered with mind, heart, and courage. And that was enough to earn the galaxy's respect, enough to inspire, enough to leave a mark that could never be erased.